My name is Geoff. I'm here from Austin, Texas, and Andrew was saying earlier about how Music Tech Fest kind of grows by, accumulating debris as it rolls from town to town, and I'm some of that debris. I was here I went to Music Tech Fest in Berlin, and I've rarely been in a situation where there were so many people that shared my obsessions, and it was really cool. Like, I have a few buzzwords that describe my project, and it seems like every other presenter, uses one or more of these buzzwords, So Bentrax, I say, is a platform for publishing collaborative, generative, interactive music. And almost everybody you've heard is either interactive, generative, or collaborative. So this is really my scene, So I'm really happy these people let me talk here. I'm also extremely happy to be here at EarCom, where there's been so much amazing work pushing the boundaries of music forward. My project uses pure data, which, if you think about it right, was pretty much invented here at EarCom. And I'm also super happy to be here in Paris. I've been reading a lot of French thinkers lately, and probably the most appropriate to my own project here is this guy Jacques Attali. Y'all probably know him, most of you. He has this amazing book, Noise, it's called, The Political Economy of Music. Really, really incredible book. If you haven't read it, it's fairly short, it's dense. I've been reading it in translation. I'm sure it's much better in French. But if you get a chance, read it. It talks about the different stages of music and as they relate to economy and to the organization of society. And I think he starts with sacrifice. He moves from there to representation and to repetition. And then he and most interestingly, he suggests this final stage of music, or a future stage of music, which he calls composition. And I've borrowed that word. Other projects like mine use different language. I think the Noggle Dance guys say soundscape, but I've said composition. I've called these interactive musical works compositions, sort of in honor of Attali. And the most interesting thing about this fifth stage of music that he suggests, this compositional stage, is that the act of listening itself becomes a creative act. And that's sort of the most exciting thing about that possibility to me. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm extremely happy to be here at this historical moment as well, because I think that more so than in many points in the past, the proliferation of the technology that we have these days is really making it possible for the way that we've created and enjoyed music for the last 200 years. It hasn't really changed much, honestly, but it's at this cusp where it really might be changing soon, like the way that music is actually experienced. And that's extremely exciting, and you don't always catch a historical moment like that. So I'm happy to be here in many, many senses. Hey, look at that, and it all works. Cool. So what I'm going to show you here is an iOS app, and the obvious question is why an app, but there's a pretty obvious answer. And the answer is that everybody already listens to music on these things. They've got them in their pocket already, and they're already listening to music on them. But the music that they're listening to is ridiculously old-fashioned, right? So it's almost as if people are using these incredible new technologies with basically a broken record player, So it doesn't work as well as a record player for playing back static 3-minute tracks. And yet, people use it for that, and it's pure nostalgia. There's absolutely no reason why people should be listening to music that sounds the same every time it's listened to. And I honestly think that in a future generation, that children will say to, can you believe that Granddad's music sounded the same every time he played it? That's crazy, And the differential between what's possible on this platform and what's being done is incredible. And we have sensors, we have internet connection, we have a fast processor that can do DSP, and yet we're playing back these static 3-minute things, So I'm attempting to sort of address that differential and help make it arc. Right, so this is an app that I did with a group of musicians in Austin, Texas, called Church of the Friendly Ghost. And these guys are, hold on, I'm going to do something real quick here. There we go. These guys are, kind of like the Music Tech Fest folks and kind of like the EarCam folks in that they're they're people who are thinking about new musical possibilities, and they're to use bad French, they're avant-garde, right? So that's why I could convince them to do that. So, but this is each one of those circles you see is an audio track. And you can kind of crossfade between the audio tracks by... You can also turn these on and off, so each one of them is a separate track. You can do pitch shift by... And it may not be as obvious, but each one of those circles behaves a little different. Each position in the clock behaves a little different. So as you spin the tracks around, you can get variations that way too. So that's pretty cool. We've got interactive music. That wasn't too hard, to make music interactive, right? So let's try another buzzword on the cell phone. Let's see if we can make music collaborative as well, So let's try that, Well, the way that works with this app is that like I said, each one of these 5 circles is by a certain musician, But you can individually throw away any of those circles, and a new one will come in, and that'll be by a different musician. So if you don't like these tracks, you can sort of throw them away individually and bring new tracks in, So maybe collaboration is slightly the wrong word, maybe more community created, right? Because the collaboration is in some sense blind. But the point is that the music is created by a community and not by an individual auteur. And that makes a lot more sense with how music actually works. Music is never created by auteurs. They're convenient bookmarks to talk about music, but it's never the way music is really created. So now we have interactive, collaborative music. Let's try to throw another buzzword in there. What if you don't want to interact and you don't want to collaborate either? What if all you want to do is listen? That's totally fair. That's where we throw the buzzword generative in there. So this is also generative music, So if I lock the phone and put it down, it just plays back by itself, So I've got some algorithms that play it back by itself, So you can either mess with it or not. It's up to you. And that's the whole point of the system, is it engages with you at whatever level you wish to engage. If you want to listen, you listen. If you want to mess with it, you mess with it. And that brings us to the third part, and that's why this is this app is not really Bentrax. Like I said, this app is an app I did for an organization, for a certain collection of people. But the difference between this app and Bentrax, and this is my main app, Bentrax, the real difference here is that this app, you can actually upload your own music very easily, super easily. In fact, if you go to bentrax.com and just sign up, you give it your email address, you can drag and drop. There's a HTML5 audio browser interface where you can drag and drop your loops, They go up into Bentrax, and you can have them down on your phone, within 30 seconds, So the point of it was to make it extremely easy for people to publish music. And that's really the point. I think that we've seen a lot of this kind of new interfaces and interactivity at Music Tech Fest. We've seen teapots on maps. We've seen pillars that are interactive. We've seen various approaches to dancing being interactive. But the thing is, it's always extremely tightly coupled to the content itself. So the new interface, you invent a new interface, and then you invent the music that new interface plays. And you have to do both. And that's happened with every project that I've seen here for the most part. And I think while we are all working in the avant-garde, which we have to admit we are, that's totally cool. As long as this installation mentality of, this extreme curiosity, let me check out what it, as long as we're at that stage, it's totally cool to have your content tightly coupled to your interface. But at some point, when this hits the mainstream, and that's really where I'm aiming for that point when all pop music is like this, and I don't think it's that far away. But at that point, we are not going to, the tight coupling is not going to work because it's not going to scale. So I'm attempting to pitch Bentrax forward into a future point where this is pop music, and where a corpus of interoperable compositions which are permeable to input. So compositions, so artistic works which are completely expressed by the artist, but nevertheless take input. And I'm trying to be a publication platform for that kind of music. So that's really the main purpose. And like I said, the main difference between this app works the same way as that other app. The main difference is that you can actually upload your music, and you can do it extremely easily. So the point was to make a very simple set of rules that open up into a wide range of possibilities. And I've had a lot of uploads, even compared to competitors, I've had a lot of uploads from artists. And the reason why is because it's super easy. The recipe is really, really easy. 5 8-second loops that sound good together. That's all I have to tell people. So all of you can log on, upload your own stuff. And when you touch one, hold it down, it mutes, and you can see who the actual artist is. So it's remembering who these different artists are. So if you see this one, 2 of these are this band Country Soul Ensemble, 3 of them are, and then 2 of them are this band Chalkboards. So that brings me to the very last thing I'm going to talk about, which is, why would you ever upload stuff to this thing in the first place? Well, maybe you just want your music in an app. Maybe you're avant-garde yourself, and Bjork has an app, and Radiohead has an app, but you can't afford to get a custom coder to code your own app, but you want your music in an app anyway, You just think it's cool. So you might want to publish for that reason, or you might actually want money. And that's something I haven't coded yet, but it's extremely important to the idea, and unless I can pay artists, this will not be a successful project, right? And the cool thing about the way I'm paying artists is that I can pay artists proportionally to their contribution. So, first of all, I'm not going to use the word pay, I'm going to use the word support, because that word makes a lot more sense in terms of the internet these days and how people get paid, So eventually that little heart button will be a chance to support the artist. And when you support the artist for this composition, you're actually supporting 2 artists. These 3 are by Country Soul Ensemble, these 2 are by this band Chalkboards. But we know 3/5 of this music is from Country Soul Ensemble, 2/5 is from Chalkboards. And we can actually pay based on that ratio. So everybody knows that Clyde Stubblefield, James Brown's drummer, should be getting paid almost every time a hip-hop song gets played, right? But there is absolutely no system of remuneration which takes into account this very simple fact that music is created by borrowing. So I'm simply trying to write a software system which handles that basic business rule about music. And we can keep all of this genealogy in a database, and pay people proportionally, And not only that, but to get back to Ada Lee and the concept of creation being, or listening being a creative act, right? Even if you're just the person that for the first time decided that those 5 tracks sounded good together, I'm in the system that is considered a creative act. So putting those 5 together for the first time is an act of creativity, and it's paid, right? So in this case, half of this money would go to Country Soul Ensemble, 2/6 of this money, 1/3 would go to Chalkboards, and 1/6 of this money would go to the person that clicked that heart button in the first place and decided that those 5 sounded good together. So, in other words, things like playlists, things like curation, acts of curation by people who consider themselves listeners are actually creative acts, and they should be remunerated. So the system's going to attempt to do that too. So while we let this play generatively for a couple more minutes, I'll just say that the proliferation of technology in our lives, which I referred to earlier, there's been a lot of anxiety about it in some circles, that it seeks to dehumanize, people in certain ways. There's fears about that, and those are legitimate fears. But I would say that my project in particular is trying to rehumanize something which has been dead for a long time, which is that 3-minute stereo track, which always sounds the same. So we can use technology to bring humanity back to music too. So I encourage you to publish future music and use the platform that's going to pay you fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoff.